Welcome, everyone. I'm Chari Elam with the Bee Supply Monthly Magazine and the Bee Supply. And I have got a super guest with me today. And I bet a few of you, maybe like 130,000 of you, know who this guy is. Welcome, Randy Dirt Rooster McCaffrey. How are you?
Hey, Sherry, thank you for having me this morning. Great to be with you.
Thanks. I mean, it's just like and I know this sounds so silly, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but in my position, I feel like I'm interviewing a rock star here.
Well, I wish I'd have brought my guitar.
Right. Well, if we start playing music, everybody needs to say,
Yeah.
They need to find a new job.
I do have a guitar in my truck, but the strings are all ripped off of it. I was gonna start a nucleus colony in it and do a cutout on it for a video.
You should do that. That would really, that's cool.
I've got it ready to go.
That's awesome. Well, hi, Randy. I know, like I said, everybody knows who you are, that most everybody knows who you are, but I want you to just act like they don't. Who is Randy? And I know you're from Gulfport, Mississippi, which I love that area. Been there a time or two. Tell us about yourself.
Southern born and bred, Mississippi born and raised, and I'm a contractor and professional bee remover, pretty good beekeeper, sideliner. I claim to be a hobbyist, which, everybody's got different levels for what's a hobbyist and what's sideline and commercial. Most of the year, I probably would fall into the hobbyist category, aside from being a bee removal specialist. So a lot of people want me to come speak about keeping bees. I'm like, well, I remove bees, but that's mostly what I do is bee removals, a little bit of teaching on YouTube, a lot of goofing and entertainment on YouTube. And I'm 53 years old, been married for 30 some odd years, got 3 kids and 5 grandkids, and doing the bee thing, loving life, retired from everything else, and pretty much do a little bit of other things, but beekeeping mainly.
That's awesome. Well, we can definitely appreciate your background in construction. That my husband had that company for a lot of years. Truly does come in handy with what your chosen profession of doing removals.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine. I hear people all the time saying, well, gosh, so and so down the road, they said they've got a hive that's growing in the barn and that want me to come remove it. And I said, well, have you ever pulled a barn before? Oh, no. Well, have you ever put one back? Because one way or another, one of those skills needs to come into play.
Yeah, no, but I saw it in a 10-minute video on YouTube, and it's not that hard.
Right. And my name today is Fred. So they don't know who I am. Well, your background definitely helps, and I know that's one reason that you've been able to be successful at it. I did dig back and see that you've been on YouTube for 10 years. 10 years shows, because it can do oldest to newest, and that's a long time on the front there. Wow.
It doesn't feel like it's been that long. When I look back at all the videos and some of the old stuff, like, man, that seems like yesterday. It doesn't seem like 10 years ago.
Isn't that something?
It flies.
It does. And if you're like me, you look back and go, gosh, did I really say that? I mean,
YouTube is a lot of where when you start putting content out on YouTube, especially back in the early days, we were one of the only beekeeping channels on YouTube. And so people thought, naturally you must be a bee expert. And so YouTube really improved my beekeeping skills just by mentoring thousands of people over the years, answering questions or literally taking on students. But it's amazing how much you learn just by people asking you questions, and you're having to think, well, maybe what is the answer to that? And you have to go figure it out or look it up or contact somebody that knows, because it's not Googleable. Yeah. But a lot of what people ask, you could look it up on Google, but a lot of it you can't. And a lot of it you're like, man, I've been keeping bees for a long time and I've never thought about that.
So true.
I'm gonna figure that out real quick.
Well, and I've said the same thing, because the Lord works in mysterious ways. We got elected to a teaching position in beekeeping in our local club, and we had successfully killed our first colony. So what I knew how to teach was how to kill a colony of bees. That was really it. But you're so right. The being out in the reach, or in the public eye, forces you to learn where you can be a good mentor, and you've been an excellent mentor in that respect, which is great. It's truly super cool as an outsider looking in on your journey. So I got to ask you a question. In a bio I found from a previous convention to not be mentioned last year in January, it said, and I really researched to see if I could find an answer, but I couldn't watch all 1,000,000 of your videos. It said he conducts studies in much of his work, such as mite count and disease studies in feral and otherwise chemically untreated bee colonies. Tell me what that's about. What is that?
That was something that I started before COVID. I guess you could say COVID on YouTube now. I don't know, but
Think.
Before the big C. So my brother and I have had a long-standing argument, treatment or non-treatment, and neither one of us are hard line either way. He's been using treatments since he started beekeeping, or pretty close to it, and I've been completely treatment free for 13 years now. I've been beekeeping for 13 years. So and that is mainly due to my observations and my experience down here where I'm at, and the fact that I had been keeping bees for about 3 years before I even found out there was a such thing as Varroa.
Oh, wow.
And Varroa was in the States for 20 something years before I got into beekeeping.
Right.
And so they were here. I just didn't know what they were, never heard of them. So part of my reason for the study, the main reason, was because I was getting asked to come speak at conferences, and I didn't have anything sciencey to talk about. And I'm up against the likes of Jamie Ellis, who we've already talked about prior to going live, and other people like that who really have a good head on their shoulders, and they're deep into anything scientific. And so I needed something aside from some funny stories or whatever to share. And so I thought, who better to do a study on feral colonies than someone who sees them, sometimes a couple hundred a year.
Yeah.
And you don't see universities with that reach for feral colonies. So I thought, shoot, that's something that I can offer that nobody else can, and I can study it. And beekeeping is pretty regional, so it'll apply to my area, whatever findings I'm having. It might apply farther out, but I'll tell everybody, don't take my results and run with it when you're half the country away, because it might not work for you. But so part of it was just to have something intelligent to share, aside from some fun stories, and aside from, we do teach a fair amount of stuff that we learn from cutouts, and that is, I won't say it's not intelligent, because there is some wisdom in some of that. But part of it was also to put a thumb in my brother's eye,
I was going to say, wasn't that because I'm right, you're wrong?
Yeah. Part of it was, it's been, you got to treat her, you're going to lose your bees. And I'm like, well, I'm doing as good or better than you. So who's right? And part, I can't say that his failures are purely beekeeping related. He's got other businesses just like I do, and he gets busy and loses colonies, but
sure.
He keeps a lot more colonies than I do. He's, generally 250 to 300 range.
That's a healthy amount.
And I, up until the last couple of years, he's been dialing back, but I stay usually around 50 or so for the season. Sometimes I'll get up to 100 maybe, but I usually sell them off or give them away, and keep it around a manageable range for me. So that's how I got into the study thing. Well, I started it before the big thing, the big C.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done a lot of them, and as soon as that happened, alcohol ran out. You couldn't buy
Right.
alcohol. Couldn't buy alcohol anywhere. So I pretty quickly stopped doing alcohol washes, but still checking drone brood and looking for a deformed wing and different things like that, which you rarely ever see in a feral colony. You just don't see that kind of stuff. You don't see the diseases that come along with the Varroa.
Mhm.
And so I was, now looking back, there was people use windshield washer fluid and Dawn dish soap, different things like that. I hadn't heard of any of that back then. So it was probably, I was 6 or 8 months before I started it back up. And we do cutouts all year long down here. So it was a small gap, but it was a substantial amount of time. And since I've only been doing this since, the big C started. So I've probably got data on 250 or 300 colonies.
Well, you want to share any of that?
Yeah, it's very boring. It's not.
Well,
I guess
I'm curious, who's winning? You or your brother? 50-50 split, I bet.
The bees are living without intervention from the outside. So most of the colonies that I do a wash on, 99.9% of them are going to have in the range of 1 mite per 100 or less.
That's okay.
I did 2 removals the other day that you might have seen them posted on Facebook. It was two colonies on a wall side by side. Well, the smaller colony down on the bottom was in really good shape, great queen, good laying pattern. For whatever reason, once I disturbed them, they rolled that queen. So I found her second comb in. I found her dead on the frame or on the comb, but her brood pattern was great. She looked good, and I did a mite wash on them and got 2 mites. It was about 400 bees or so, and 2 mites. And the larger colony had gone queenless and was dying off. And I thought, well, surely this colony is going to show problems. So I ended up doing 2 washes on that colony and got 0 mites in either wash. And so,
well, they've been broodless, so or queenless anyway. So
they have been queenless, but when you hear the talking heads talk about your bees are dying because of Varroa, you would think there would be some Varroa on them if they're dying. And
yeah,
so
you would think,
even though broodless, because there was some capped drone brood still. And,
well, it just depends on how often they've requeened. And you talk about talking heads. I've talked to the premier in the treatment-free world and multiple interviews with them. And it's really has to do with the amount of requeening the hive does, because if they're doing self-correction, then, it pretty much leaves you in a great green grass area. You're in a sweet spot with that, which may be what you're seeing.
Well, that was another thing that I was addressing in some of my studies, is that I hear a lot of people talk about how swarmy feral colonies are, and they're not any more swarmy than managed colonies, and even less so sometimes because they have room to expand without waiting on a beekeeper to add supers or whatever. They move into a joist space or something, and there's expansion room for days, and they go 12 feet, 20 feet, whatever it is, without limitations other than the size of colony that they want to manage. And so they don't, they might throw 2 swarms a year max, but most of them are just 1 swarm a year.
Yeah.
And especially the really big colonies, they're not swarmy. So to attribute low mite count to a lot of swarms is tough. I won't say it doesn't happen, because I'm sure it does, because we all know brood breaks slow mite growth. Sure. And
well, just to revert back, because it really interested me. You said they rolled that queen in that bottom hive, and that probably was a newer queen. If it was really good fresh brood, wouldn't you kind of expect it was probably a newer queen?
I would expect so, but she wasn't old. Her wings weren't tattered. She wasn't ragged looking. She was she was this year's, I'm sure.
Well, so what that proves to me,
that was a first year colony, so she was at least 1 year.
1 year.
Or, less than a year.
So what that proves when they'll ball that queen, it really proves that hypothesis that we've heard over and over again, that bees will punish the queen for the beekeeper.
They will.
Messing them.
They will.
They will. And we've said that, I cannot tell you how many times to new beekeepers, especially that go in and overkeep. You're a beekeeper, not an overkeeper, right? And when you do, then you're going to walk in one day and that queen's going to be gone. You're going to go like, well, I know I didn't kill that queen. No, but they may have, because they were punishing her for your behavior going in too often. And that may have been what happened to you the other day. It just, they went in and they said, well, he's here, going to tear us up. You die.
Yeah.
Could be. It could be. Who knows?
And they were the most docile bees. That's the ones that I'm literally kissing the hive in a picture.
Yeah.
I mean, that's after I
You
pulled
did.
the wallboard off of them and kind of shook them up a little bit, and they were just as calm as they could be. But they weren't having it from her.
And a lot of your videos, your bees are pretty calm. And I can't say that for our area. We're Southeast Texas, and that you're not all that far from us, and kind of as the equator falls, you're pretty on the same longitude as we are. So I'm surprised, because I've done research on Africanized tendencies, that you really are in you've got that infiltration in your area, but it's not near, I'm guessing, as bad as what we have.
Well, we don't have it at all here.
I'll be darned. Huh.
It's not even
incorrect then.
But I'm not even seeing it in Louisiana. We do cutouts over in Louisiana, and of course I follow, Mr. Ed and all those guys over there that cut out further into Louisiana than I do. None of us have ever seen a Africanized colony down here. I've had one colony in 13 years that I thought, possible, but it would have had to jump 2 states and housed up in the bottom of this apartment complex, and it doesn't happen. But it wasn't anything that I couldn't have done without just a veil and gloves, but I would have regretted it.
I know that video you're talking about. It was an apartment. Mr. Ed was in it, wasn't he?
It was Bob Collins.
Okay.
With a local beekeeper was helping me out on that one.
Well, I don't know. The maps, you can't believe your lying eyes on people's attitude of where the Africanized zones are. We're jealous, because our bees just aren't that. Now, when we have managed colonies that we purchase, like our bees, the TBS bees, know the queen genetics, and they're sweet bees, and we could, with minimal protection, work those bees and do. But on cutouts and removals, we're not afforded that, because odds are the queen that self-mated, and we call it the boys in the neighborhood, are not good boys. They grew up on the other side of the tracks. No offense to anybody that grew up on the other side, because I either one on the other side of the tracks, right?
Yeah, you don't know which side of tracks you're talking about.
That's exactly right. But they're not sweet bees. And I will say, I will concur with you on the only one in all of my years. We've been about a dozen years beekeeping, and you sure know it when you run across an Africanized hive. You literally open the hive, even if you've smoked it. And of course, I'm talking a managed hive. It was instantly covered the veil. We were completely covered. You couldn't even see daylight. That's an Africanized hive that's been put in a managed box. That isn't okay.
I've been into bees in Texas a couple times. Delivered queens to a beekeeper in Dickinson area south of Houston one time, who had some testy bees, and he wanted some pure Italian stocks, and I was going over there anyway, so I delivered a dozen queens to him, and we went into his bees. And I was not suited up to begin with, and he didn't have Africanized colony, but he had hot bees. So I ended up having to put a jacket on. But I've never been into Africanized bees before, and I've seen it. And Tony, with everything BVAC, keeps them.
He does.
And so I've seen how his act on him, And I've never been around anything like that. It's other than Southern yellow jackets.
Yeah, Tony's crazy. It's like, what are you doing, dude? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
those are killers.
That's killer stuff. Well, we just requeen. I mean, we're, because we're in that zone, we try to not let them self-mate. And if it does, we'd let it and see how it goes,
I have some theories on possibly why we don't have them here, and I may be totally off, or I may be part right, but we have so many commercial beekeepers that come to South Mississippi, South Louisiana, South Texas, South, not necessarily Alabama, Florida, early in the season to start raising queens and requeening all their colonies. So they're bringing literal hundreds of thousands of colonies across these few states to requeen.
Good genetics.
Of good genetics,
Yeah.
and pure Italians, Carniolans, Russians, whatever they're running. And so when you've got that many of good genetics flooding an area, I think it's just difficult for them to encroach on that. I don't know if that's the whole reason, part of the reason, or none of the reason, but that's just one of my theories on why we might not have that problem here.
Well, it's logic. It's completely logic. That's why I always encourage new beekeepers that if you've got a commercial beekeeper that's near you, put up swarm traps.
Absolutely.
Those are some
You're going to catch something.
You're going to get something, and they're going to be pretty good bees. So
yeah.
I think that's logic, and it truly makes sense to me. It's just logic.
And there's the thing that some creatures just don't live. Like, we're in South Mississippi, we don't have elk down here, and there's no fence, there's nothing keeping elk from coming this far other than a bunch of rednecks with shotguns. But
right,
but they just there's things that just don't live down here. And the same for up north. They don't have small hive beetles up north. So maybe we're just in a zone that is not conducive to Africanized colonies, and maybe that's why we don't have the huge mite problems where we are, just because of the zone we're in. Maybe that's part of the reason, and it's not because our feral stock is so great that they're fighting off everything that comes against them, because they succumb to small hive beetles and starvation and whatever else, just like everything else does. But maybe it's just where we are, and I think that's part of the reason that I'm able to get away treatment free. Of course, there are people all over the country that run treatment free, so
there are some with success and limited success, some with very good success,
right, and some complete failures.
Some complete failures, but there's failures in treatments as well. So I think, and my stance on it, and TBS's stance, will do what works for you. Because we're trying to perpetuate the species of beekeepers. When we perpetuate beekeepers, we're perpetuating bees. So the more beekeepers that are out there doing it, and it's success and failure. I mean, we're even doing that this many years into our journey, right? I mean, it's constant. So I say whatever works for you. We treat, but and our losses are really at the low end of the threshold when you look at the BIP statistics. But that's just us. We're pretty good beekeepers this far in the game. But whatever works for you, truly, whatever works for you. Well, I want you to publish. Go ahead.
I don't try to change anybody's program. I don't try to talk them into going treatment free, because I don't really care. I honestly, let me look at the camera. I don't care.
I love that.
But I say have fun. If you're not having fun, look, if this wasn't fun for me, I'd be gone. You wouldn't see me on YouTube. I'd be doing, well, you might, but I'd be doing something else on YouTube, not beekeeping. If it wasn't fun for me, I'd be out. And so I just have a good time with all this stuff.
That's when we kind of scaled back our beekeeping operation, was when James walked in one day and he said, I'm not having fun anymore. And, he had just come in for, I don't know how many hives we had, 60 hives out there, maybe 65 or 70. I don't even remember. And it was a lot for one guy, because I was busy with the magazine, and it was like, okay, so then that's when you need to dial it back and have fun again, because we love this bug. So I
Yeah.
want to keep it fun, and wherever that threshold is with you, that's where you're going to stay. Need to stay is keep it fun. Keep it fun.
Back up, regroup, reassess, and figure out what's manageable, and don't let it take away from the rest of your life.
So are your hives primarily your cutouts? Is that what you keep or cut
No,
out?
I give away a lot of those. Probably, I'd say half and half. During the spring, of course, we're making queens and making splits and raising our own bees, and then through the year we're cutting out a lot of we're 100 colonies a year cut out, and another. It's been slow the past couple of years, but generally we're 40 or 50 swarms, and so I give a lot of that away, and especially later in the year when I just don't have time. And
Sure.
I've got 50 colonies I already manage and don't want to add to that. So if I'm an hour and a half away, I've got a whole lot of beekeepers in my phone along with the city they're in, and I'll make my calls. I say, "Hey, you got any empty equipment? I'm coming by to dump some bees." And they,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
sure,
awesome.
love to have them. So if it's not 10 o'clock at night and I don't have a 2-hour drive home, I'll drive by somebody's house and dump some bees and some equipment.
Well,
And so,
that's great. That's great for them and great for you too.
yeah, it saves me a lot of headache, a lot of work, and I get paid to do the removal. I don't need the bees, and it's not that I can't take them. I've got the equipment, or dump them at my dad's place or whatever. But yeah, I give away a lot of
So
cutouts.
you keep 50 production hives then, basically keeping you in bees and honey, I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
yeah.
Well,
Well, I don't pull a lot of honey, but I could. I usually just leave it on them and spread it out, kind of going into winter, kind of even them up going into winter, and just let them run. I'll just leave it all on them. And come spring, I might have a hive that came through winter and 4 10-frame deeps with a box and a half of honey on them, and now it's 4 boxes of bees, and you can split that up a lot of ways.
you can a lot of ways. You probably get 6 or 7 out
Even
of it.
even if you don't have a lot of brood in some of it, you can still split the bees up and make something out of it when you've got good queens. And sometimes early in the year, I'll get a lot of 1-year-olds that are coming out of almonds. When they bring all those bees off of almonds, they're
Yeah.
requeening everything, and they'll pull all those 1-year-olds. They requeen every year, so they're all 1-year-old bees, but they're all still laying good.
Right.
So I'll get a bunch of 1-year-olds just to start off with, and then integrate new queens into whatever I'm selling.
That's a very good idea. Very good business plan. I see that on Facebook every time almonds are done. These commercial guys going, I got 250, just pulled them off, and good prices. So
Yeah.
anybody out there wanting to restock, that's usually let's see, that'd be end of March.
Yeah.
Right, 1st of April. It's a great way to restock.
Yeah,
Restock your bees.
you can build nukes. If you're wanting to go the cheap route, you can build nukes pretty cheap. $60 a nuke, you can build nukes just by buying an old queen and a couple of frames of brood. And that'll get you a start, but you can't do that anytime other than early spring. Early spring, you almost can't screw up.
That is so true. So true. And somebody out there said, why? Because you've got nectar flow, you've got a queen that's totally focused on laying, and a hive that's going, let's get it going. Let's get it going. Nectar flow's coming up. We're going, or it's here. And no, you can't foul that up. That's usually I've tried.
Oh, yeah.
Over the years, I've been a time or two been successful. That was really in the beginning. Yeah. So
well, you were talking about new beekeepers being in their bees too much. I was in mine every single day. No kidding.
Wow.
My office was at my house. If I got bored and I wanted to go see what they were doing, I'd go out there and pop a lid. And I had hot bees to start with, and so I would go out there unsuited, pop a lid, and just see how long I could stand there before I got tagged.
You put out a video about a year ago that said you had got the most stings you had, 120 to 150 stings. Have you topped that?
No.
That's a bunch.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, I figured out it doesn't really do much to me, and my body can handle it. My eyes are crusty the next morning. Is about it. Other than you do get a little bit of swelling and itching, but uh, people ask how many bees does it take to kill you. I don't think I'll ever find that out.
I
But
hope not.
but I can handle a lot.
You can. Well, you're acclimated to it, and we are too. We've been stung a time or two. I chuckled, I guess it was about a month ago, came and put, I think it was his son on that where he had gotten stung, calling him banana eyes. It's so sad when kids get stung, but everybody's different. And you, in that video where you were showing those things to me, you didn't look that reactive to it. I can get stung up here, no big deal. I get stung on my legs. It is ugly. Weird how that is.
It is.
Just everybody's different, but I don't know.
My vulnerable points are right here in my eyebrows or close to my upper lip, and that's where you see the swelling. Other than that,
I want to see that video.
This eyebrow here, this is still tender right now.
They last forever. Yeah, I got stung on the upper lip. Oh God, it was right before we had to do a webinar or something, and it was so sore. It didn't swell, thankfully, but oh man, it got sore. Sometimes you just have to go, okay, watered the eye, but I'm good. I'm good. Good. Well, I'm a suit person because like we've said, our bees around here, as long as they stay requeened and managed, they're fine. But we run across too many feral hives that I am a suit girl. I wear suits, and
I probably would suit up more if I was in Texas. I have no doubt. It's not as humid out there for one thing, but you still
is it not?
I don't think so. I know it's not. It's the temperature is higher, but the humidity is not.
Let's talk about that temperature. So it's hot here. So today I think we're going to be a cool, balmy 103. What are y'all today? What are y'all going to
be? Yesterday it was 100. It's 98 is going to be the high for today.
Oh gosh, you could just kick back with a sweet tea and enjoy that coolness.
Humidity is 68%.
Oh my goodness, Randy, no, you need to come over and visit me on Lake Conroe. We're 103 of a humidity of about 94%. It is miserable. Working bees, we have a place that we work bees, and it's just, you melt. You just melt, and it's not healthy, really. Let's just get real.
Yeah, I get just walking in my truck, I'll get sweaty.
Yeah, is your wife love you like I love my husband because you leave a row of wet shirts in the laundry room at the end of the day? You're like, okay, thanks.
Well, she put up a clothesline outside, so I didn't bring my stinky shirts in the house.
Okay, tell your wife.
So I have to go out there and remove them or flip them because she'll leave them there. She won't touch them, and they'll get sun bleached on one side. She's like, get them stinky shirts outside.
They are so bad. Oh my gosh! All my husband has to do is just walk out. Matter of fact, he's on work bees here today, and I'm like, okay, I know what that laundry list is going to look like. But you know what? I'm going to put a line outside and let him start hanging them outside. Why didn't I think of that?
Well, the bees get on them too. They like that sweat.
That's true. They totally do. That saltiness in there. They sure do. Well, it's hot. Are your bees suffering? Your managed hives, are they suffering from the heat right now?
They are. The heat and the drought. We haven't had any rain in a good while, and our grass is dying, which is unusual because it's so wet here. Our grass never dies. But it's crunchy now, and we haven't had rain in a while. And I don't generally sell nukes this late in the year. And I had a guy contact me he's got ALS, and that seems to be his one thing is his bees. But he lost his bees, and so he wanted a nuke. I said, "Sure, I'll sell you a nuke. You have a little bit of experience. I don't like to sell people nukes this late in the year because I know they're probably going to lose them." And so I went out there and I had 3. Well, I've got probably a dozen nukes out there still in plastic nuke boxes, but I had 3 in easy nukes that were ready to go. One of them, I lifted the lid and it had a bunch of honeycomb built in the top of it. And I was like, man, I don't feel like going through that, clean all that out. So I just took my hive tool and cleaned the bottom of the lid off and shut it. That's all I did. I was in it for 30 seconds. Next one I cracked open, looked at it, and I was like, not strong enough. I close it. And the next one I go to and I popped the lid. I was like, okay, this one looks good. So I pulled 2 frames out, found the queen, marked her, stuck them back in, closed it, walked away. And that's all I did. I wasn't in any of them. Even the one I marked the queen, I was probably in it less than a minute because I wasn't videoing, so I don't have to take my time. I can do what I do. 2 days later, he come to pick this nuke up. He sent his son to pick the nuke up, and they're 2 hours away from me. So I go out to get the nuke. I'm gonna sack it up in a laundry sack from Family Dollar because they're transporting it in a truck and they're scared of the bees. So I go out there, and all 3 of those boxes that I had touched, every bee in them was hanging out on the outside of the box. What in the world? So I can only imagine it had something to do with the heat, because the one that I marked the queen had really good brood frames in it. And so I've actually requeened or repopulated those into a Apame box. One of the others is in an oak tree about 30 foot up, and the other one left. So,
yeah, they're going to find a way to cool down. That's all there is to it. Yeah.
And so because they drove from so far away and I didn't have time to go find another one, I had a 7-frame Apame nuke box with the same genetics in it that I knew was going to be a good colony. And I just handed them that Apame box and I said, I'm coming to Texas in 3 weeks, whatever it is. I'll stop by and get my Apame box back, but take these. If they're not good in the spring, I will get you a brand new colony and I'll deliver it. And I was like, ugh.
Well, at least you gave them some bees. They were happy to get those bees. Well, and I'll say, that's a good plug for Apame out there, wherever you're from, whether you pronounce the I or not. Apame boxes are super insulators. We have really seen that has been a great summer box. I think that when we first saw that come out, or at least my mind went to winter box. That's, it's a winter box. But for these heat-filled days, I wish that I had every one of our hives in those, because they're not the ones that are boiling out the front.
They're not bearding.
No, but I can show you right out my kitchen window that hives that are, they're perfectly good hives, but every morning even, they're all out in front of the boxes because it's too hot inside.
That's something I do preach is insulation value, because when you're doing feral colony removals, you don't see feral colonies bearding or washboarding.
No,
they're just inside. They're comfortable. They have a manageable space, but you come look at managed colonies and they've got 3/4 inch wood between them and the outside world, which has an R value of less than 1.
Yeah.
And they're all over the outside of the box. They're trying to manage the temperature. Temperatures fluctuating through the day from 70 degrees at night to 100 and something during the day, and back down, that's a stressor that they don't need. And the Apame box is R value of 7, I believe.
It is.
And they don't have problems like that with that.
It's that dead airspace, it truly is that dead airspace. And I guess you could do some sort of a homemade version of that and just build a false outside around your boxes. But yeah, there's definitely a benefit to them. Are you feeding? Do you need to feed right now? Are they eating all their stores? Yeah.
Right now I'm feeding a lot of cutout comb. So when I come home, I just leave a bag open in the back of my truck, and it's Meals on Wheels. They just attack my truck.
Meals on Wheels. I love that.
And so I get to, Elizabeth gets to fussing at me when I park too close to the house. I can't even get to my car. And I'm like, they'll be done in a minute.
Really like that. Now, come on. Show her this video and see if she approves. That's a great way to do it. If they've not been sprayed, then I'm okay with that for sure. Area feeding I'm not a proponent of. Matter of fact, I wrote an article about it coming up in this next issue. But there's times when it's fine. If it's a good clean colony you pulled out that it's doesn't have a lot of pesticide wrapped in it, then shoot, it's fine.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I know how to tell, and a lot of people don't. So I don't recommend that to everybody. If it's your first time to pull a Pharaoh colony and you don't know what you're looking at, maybe eat the honey yourself. Try it out and see if it tastes like Spectracide.
Well, if you want to share what you think about that, I'll say what I think about how to tell. You'll typically, number one, they're spraying on the outside of a structure and it's not even getting on the inside. So it's just dead bees on the outside. But if by chance they are penetrating the hive itself, you'll see a dead space in that comb. It's almost like it's, the moon. It's really dark and it's just a dead space. What is it that you see that tells you it's been sprayed?
I see that. Also, if there's oily residue running down the wall, because they'll spray so long that it runs down the wall, you can see that sometimes. Sometimes that's evidence of an old dead out, but sometimes it's spray. And sometimes I'll show up and there's empty cans of Spectracide laying on the ground and they swear they didn't spray it. And I'm like, well, maybe your neighbors have come over and snuck around back of your house in this fenced yard and sprayed.
Spent $20 on cans just for you.
Just for you.
A video about that. I know.
But there's usually a smell to it, and there's usually a taste to it if it gets in there, and doesn't, like you say, it doesn't normally get in because they usually go in and they're traveling.
Sure.
So right in the entrance is not normally the hive, but occasionally it is. But you can taste Spectracide, and that's usually because it's cheap. That's what usually people buy.
Yeah, about is it still $3 a can? Before BC, it was $3 a can.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is now. But
and it doesn't do anything. It kills a few. If there's any dead bees stuck to the wall, it's been sprayed because bees don't die standing on the entrance to the hive. But if they've been sprayed, sometimes they'll cling to the brick or the siding or whatever, and you might have 3 or 4 dead bees up there. If there's any there, they've definitely been sprayed.
I wrote a note to myself about something I was going to ask you. Well, I think I wrote a lot of notes about what I was going to ask you, and I don't know that I even have gotten to them. Doesn't matter though, about using propolis for swarm traps, because we do that.
Yeah.
So how do you use your propolis for swarm traps?
Great trick. Sometimes I dissolve it in alcohol, and sometimes I just smear it on and take a torch and melt it in.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Works great.
Either way. And John, can't remember his name. John. Anyway, I'll give credit to the guy that built that beautiful wooden bee vac that I had years ago. I still have it, but he's the one that clued me into that because he was painting the insides of the bee vac with propolis just to calm them down when they got sucked in, because you vac bees and they start blowing alarm pheromone, and so the exhaust from that vac is, especially if you're inside, it's filling a room or whatever.
Sure.
You're just filling a room with alarm pheromone. So he was doing something to kind of calm that response from them, and dissolving propolis in alcohol and then painting the inside of the bee vac was one of his methods. And I was like, you know what, that is a great method, and it'll also work for swarm traps. Yeah. And so I just started using it as a swarm trap.
It does work. That's genius to be inside the bee vac. James, well, I laugh because we live for the first time in our lives in a subdivision. We've always been farm people, but we're getting older. And now we want our yard to be smaller. So now we're just a little half an acre, but our trees look like they've got Easter eggs, those Pro-Nuke boxes with the different So people I know, they're walking past our yard going, they got Easter eggs in the trees. No, that's just my husband putting swarm stuff out here. But he used to use those, I call them peat pots, they just look like a big giant peat pot. And he would melt that propolis and some wax on the top of those ribs, and he turns his upside down where that peat pot's hanging vertical. And you just can't keep from trapping a swarm in that. And it makes them beautiful.
Those things work great.
They do. They truly do. And if you got a sweet spot, you'll attest to that. You got a.
I'm surprised more people use them. Yeah.
I am too. I can't tell you how many we've worn out because he just leaves them up all year long,
Yeah.
They just, it's like, okay, what do you want for Christmas? Well, duh.
I used to do a lot of trapping. Anymore, I just walk by my equipment stacks and spray some swarm lure on them.
And you have the odor, don't you?
Yeah.
It's there. The pheromone lives with you.
I think it's in my blood at this point, because we'll go somewhere, we'll get out at a restaurant and there'll be a bee flying around my face, and they're like, why is that bee around your face? I don't know.
You're one of them, Randy. You have
I
become,
guess.
you have become Apis McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Feel free to market that, okay? Apis McCaffrey.
That's it.
Well, listen, I think we're going to stop it there before people get tired of listening to us just talk about bees. I enjoyed it. You're just a great guy. Great guy to
Well, I
talk.
appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you and enjoy visiting with you. I get to see you at the expo, right, in Kentucky.
You will. You will get to see me at the expo in January. We will be there, and we are so looking forward to that. Going to be a big show.
Yeah, the North American Honeybee Expo.
Yes,
it is going to be a big show.
I think it's going to be a big show.
I think he's shooting for 3,000.
Oh gosh, we'll just be like little miniature ants walking around that place. We will. The bee supply is going to rocket there. Get ready, because we're going to have a booth that's.
You're going to bring it.
We're going to bring it. It's going to be multi. If I could do, and of course, you know, Cayman will say whatever you want to do. If we can make multi-level, but we're going to get as much as Cayman will give us, and we're really excited about that. So that's January 4th.
Are you going to redneck it up? Are you bringing a 2-story mobile home? We might.
No. If we do, don't tell anybody that we talked about it ahead of time. We'll make it a. Thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you and meeting you in person. And if I can do anything, or TBS can do anything for you, you just holler.
Oh, thank you. Same here.
All right, we'll see you later.
Okay.